Utilitarianism is important because Jeremy Bentham is our name there. So Bentham, B-E-N-T-H-A-M, Jeremy Bentham. And utilitarianism in a phrase is the greatest good for the greatest number. The greatest good for the greatest number. So, what does this mean? This means that the government should do what's in the best interest of the greatest number of people. The government should not just be protecting individual rights. And Bentham is responding to these conditions of industrialization. Remember, industrialization is resulting in this very large working class that exists in horrible conditions. And liberals are saying the job of the government is liberty and protecting liberty. And therefore, creating laws that protect these people or that limit commerce, this is preventing them from being liberty. And Bentham argues that the government can limit liberty when it's in the greatest good of the greatest number. When it's a utilitarian thing to do, when it makes sense, when there's utility to it. And so, examples would be laws that ban children working in factories. Laws that limit the amount of day hours that a worker can work. And other labor laws about women working in mines. So these are all examples where the government is doing things that are limiting the liberty of, say, employers or employees to do whatever they want. But it's in the greatest good of the greatest number. Now, Bentham is a liberal who's arguing this. So he's arguing that the liberal state should be doing more than just protecting rights. And so this is the beginning of the movement of liberalism to be more responsive to the needs of people. And so by the end of the 19th century and into the 20th century, we'll see liberals beginning to consider the creation of government programs that will actually be helping people, like the elderly, people with health and doctor and things like that. Okay, Marxism we've discussed at length. So, proletarian revolution, and the proletariat will rise up, and there will be a dictatorship of the proletariat. This will happen at the end of a dialectic process. And the current government in place is the bourgeoisie. Therefore, the bourgeoisie are in power. They're implementing their morals and their ideas. So when the workers take over in the proletarian revolution, they'll put in place their morals and their ideas. And the workers then will therefore end private property, because what workers want is social equality. And therefore, we will have no more conflicts, because there will be social equality. There will not be social classes anymore. And therefore, the government will really be unnecessary, because in Marxist theory, the government is a tool of the bourgeoisie designed to protect the bourgeois class interests by protecting their private property, by having police running around saying, "You shall not steal." And so, once we get rid of private property, we won't need that. Now, the revisionist Marxists happen a generation after Marx. Marx argues that in his Communist Manifesto of 1848. But by the end of the century, revisionist Marxists are going to say, or revisionist socialists, sometimes just referred to as revisionists, they're going to be saying that perhaps Marx was wrong, that the workers will rise up. And the reason why they'll say this is because Marx predicts that the condition of the workers will continue to decline, and he predicts that the bourgeoisie, through competition, will eat each other up and will become smaller and smaller and smaller. So at some point, the workers will just easily be able to rise up and get rid of the bourgeoisie. But the reality is that the conditions of the workers are improving, and the bourgeoisie is getting larger. So this revolution that Marx predicted was inevitable as a result of this dialectic process by the end of the 19th century, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So what do socialist parties like the Social Democrats do? Edward Bernstein is one of the prominent examples of a revisionist. And Bernstein writes in his book, Evolutionary Socialism. In his book, Evolutionary Socialism, he writes that the socialism Marx predicts, in which there will be more social equality, that can happen. But Marx is wrong about the means of getting there. It will not happen through a political revolution of the proletariat, but instead will happen through the proletariat electing people to office who will put in place more socially equal laws. Laws that will create more social equality. Okay? And so that is revisionism. That instead of rejecting government, socialists should cooperate within government. Socialists should try to take over the government. Socialists should be elected and therefore should implement laws that are into the best interest of the workers. A doctrinaire Marxist like Lenin would say, no, if you do this, you'll prevent the proletariat from realizing their proletariat oppression, and therefore you'll prevent the revolution of the proletariat from ever happening. Because if you make the proletariat's conditions better, they're not going to know that they need to revolt. And so instead, the doctrinaire Marxists would argue that revisionists are accommodating the continued dominance of the bourgeoisie by giving a couple more dollars to the workers every year or every week. In exchange, the bourgeoisie continues to dominate. Yeah?
But if the workers' conditions were improved, what would...
But the bourgeoisie's dominance continues. And the workers will never realize that they need to rise up and overthrow the bourgeoisie and then dominate society themselves and create true social equality. So, so Marxists and revisionist Marxists hate each other, right? They are very different. These revisionist Marxists will be known in the 20th century as socialists. Those more doctrinaire Marxists will be dying down, the people that still believe in Marx, very, very small fringe groups, one of which is known as the Bolsheviks. And the Bolsheviks having to take over Russia and then do all this crazy stuff. And then the Bolsheviks will have their Bolshevik parties, their Marxist parties, elsewhere, and they'll be called communists. So communists and socialists do not get along in the 20th century. The socialists participate in government. The socialists want to govern, like the Social Democrats in Germany. And the communists reject that. And they don't get along until the popular fronts of the 1930s, where amidst the challenge of fascism and the threat that fascism imposes to the survival of the left, both socialists and communists, Stalin allows communist parties to join in governing coalitions, such as the Popular Front of France, which is led by the socialist Leon Blum, and that Popular Front implements things like 8-hour workdays, paid vacations, and things like that are in the best interest of the workers. That's all the way to the 19th.